The Miseducation of Jordan B. Peterson and thousands of other Bible teachers. Christian theology is a collection of lies. How can they be so wrong? It starts with a deliberately misleading translation. To understand the true Bible message, watch all our videos. In his lectures exploring the psychological makeup of Bible characters, Professor Jordan Peterson demonstrates he is unaware of key messages in the Bible. By dissecting Bible text as a professor of psychology, he examines only a very small fraction of the huge amount of useful Bible information and prophecies concerning today's world that will affect every person on planet Earth in this decade. Note, it is not possible to learn accurate Bible teaching at Christian universities or churches because they teach theologically altered Bible text that supports pagan sun god worship, which Christianity fused into church dogma. Nor can you learn from the more than 30,000 church denominations that take a few lines from the Bible and base their whole understanding on this often misinterpreted information. Hebrew scribes believed they would incur the death penalty if they changed Bible text. The amazing accuracy of the Hebrew scribes is evident by comparing present-day text to the Dead Sea Scrolls. Where possible, we must refer to the ancient Hebrew texts. We have the complete Hebrew text for the 5 Gospels and sections of the book of Revelation dating back to the 11th century. To this day, Hebrew is the most accurate Bible wording. To understand, it is essential to have a knowledge of ancient history and the Hebrew culture. For example, the 14th century English word hell described a root cellar. In an attempt to translate the Hebrew word Sheol, meaning the grave, translators used the word hell. The grave, or Sheol, also means to be exiled. Christians also mixed up the word hell with the fire of Gehenna, which is the valley in Jerusalem. I am Henry Keating, and here are my qualifications as a Bible scholar. I studied non-Bible prophecy plus Bible prophecy for 38 years. I came to the Bible through a different perspective. Because of my many years studying prophecy, I immediately understood the multi-layered prophecy of Daniel, the multiple prophecies throughout the Bible text concerning the end of the age, which is taking shape today, and the prophecies of the Messiah, including those in the book of Revelation concerning the events that must happen by 2030. Only 15% of Bible prophecy is fulfilled. Almost all the remaining 85% will be fulfilled in this decade. My approach through prophecy enabled a greater understanding of the Bible text from the first book Genesis to the last book Revelation. Being a student of history, I discovered in my research the Bible is an extremely accurate account of history, contrary to popular belief. For the past 25 years, I advised governments on future events based on my vast knowledge of prophecy. My track record demonstrates I am extremely accurate at this work. Like most teachers of the Bible, Professor Peterson has a grasp of Christian dogma and theology, but only a rudimentary knowledge of what the Bible actually conveys and a poor understanding of the overall purpose. There are extremely important messages and themes that appear in the first few Bible pages of the book of Genesis and appear again in every book right through to the last page of the book of Revelation, which is the last book of the Bible. These concepts and themes are for everyone, and once recognized, open up a much greater understanding and clarity to the Bible and the purpose of Messiah's work. Peterson's lectures also reveal he is not up to date on recent scientific and archaeological developments. To his credit, Peterson is an effective teacher of psychology who invites both criticism and new information of his very narrow viewpoint of the Bible. He will admit when he is wrong and make corrections. Also, Peterson is attracting thousands to his lectures, which demonstrates many people are hungry for greater truth and meaning in their lives that is not offered by a purely materialistic worldview. Overall, Peterson's lectures are useful and informative. It is true that Christianity and the Bible are some, but not the only, foundations of Western civilization, and therefore should be studied as Peterson advocates. But we should also be aware that early history reveals pagan sun god worship and other institutions, such as ancient governments, schools, the military, etc., were also foundational elements that appear today as part of Western culture. In reality, Western civilization is a pagan society similar to Sodom and Gomorrah, as evidenced by our obsession and worship of material things, our worship of entertainment and sports, the popularity of pagan tattoos, our complete disregard and disrespect for Jehovah's covenant with mankind, our indifference to the sacred covenant of marriage between a man and a woman, which is central to Jehovah's covenant, the increase of violence, corruption, and blatant lies by our leaders. The list is endless. The lesson of Sodom and Gomorrah is the subject of comedy, but the book of Revelation reveals the timing of the destruction of the cities of this world that continue perverted pagan practices will happen within this decade. From past history, we know Bible prophecy is never wrong. People correctly observe that since the beginning of Christianity, priests have predicted the doom of mankind. But these priests were poorly schooled in Bible prophecy that clearly reveals the tribulation will occur at the end of the 6,000-year earthly rule of Hasatan, the adversary. The Bible makes it clear most of the events in the book of Revelation will happen before 2030. Almost 500 years before the birth of Messiah, Roman armies displayed the cross of Mithra, the pagan sun god, on their shields. The cross was a symbol of the sun god because when you squint at the sun you see a cross. Interesting to note, the Bible clearly confirms there was no cross at the crucifixion. It was a straight stake or timber. The Creator, Jehovah, commands us not to bow down to any man-made object, no matter what it represents. That would include a crucifix or a statue of the Virgin Mary. From the newly discovered Hebrew text dating back to the 11th century, we know that the Gentile translators made changes from the text to deliberately mislead readers of Greek, Latin, English, and other New Testament texts in order to incorporate pagan sun god worship. That is why Christians observe the Babylonian sun god holy days of Christmas and Easter and the weekly day for sun god worship, Sunday, rather than the Sabbath, which since Exodus and to this day is Saturday. The Messiah never went to church on Sunday, not in the flesh and not in spirit. The Creator, Jehovah, commands us to observe his feasts, which are living prophecies, and not to practice pagan worship. Peterson and all of Christianity are victims of the lies of early Roman pagan religion. The sacred language, most likely invented and spoken by the Most High, is Hebrew. Messiah spoke in his father's language, Hebrew. The Hebrew-speaking followers of Messiah traveled from Israel to the assemblies or synagogues throughout the known world, as the book of Acts records. There were no churches in those days. Pagan temples were used by early Roman Christians. Churches were not invented until the 14th century. In the 1st century, there were very few Gentiles in the assemblies because they did not understand the teachings of Messiah, which were in Hebrew. It was the practice at that time to persecute Hebrew religious leaders. Those condemned to death were wrapped in their Torah scrolls that were stuffed with wet cotton and slowly roasted to death. The goal was to destroy all Hebrew Torah scrolls and those who taught the true message of Jehovah. Messiah taught this same message. Once the teachings were deliberately mistranslated into their native language, over time the Gentile fake followers of Messiah outnumbered the Hebrews. Because early Roman religious leaders hated the Jews, they created religious dogma and a false divide between the New Testament of the virtuous Christians and the Old Testament of the evil Jews. The hatred of Jews is reflected today with the many Christian denominations teaching the lie that Christians will be raptured out of this world prior to the tribulation. They, of course, ignore the fact that the book of Revelation predicts the worst tribulation mankind will ever see occurs during the sounding of the first 6 trumpets, and the rapture does not occur until the 7th and last trumpet is sounded. They claim the first 6 trumpets have already sounded, but no Bible text supports this. There is no pre-tribulation rapture. Recently discovered Hebrew copies of the Gospels and parts of the book of Revelation differ greatly from Gentile translations. One very telling change is the words the Torah, the first covenant with Jehovah, are written in the New Testament as the law, alluding to man-made pagan church law instead of Jehovah the Creator's law. It is foundationally important to know the Hebrew word Tanakh is an acronym for 5 books of Torah, instructions, 8 books of Nevi'im, prophets, 11 books of Ketuvim, writings. Tanakh was replaced with Old Testament by Christian translators. The word New Testament was replacement for the words Brit Hadashah, which translate to renewed covenant. This sheds great light on the intent of the early church fathers to destroy the most solid fundamental connection between the Tanakh, which contains the first covenant, and the renewed covenant. This means all of the original covenant instructions of the Creator, written in the Tanakh, are still in full effect. We owe the death penalty for breaking the covenant with Jehovah. Messiah, as the substitute sacrificial lamb, paid the death penalty in our place to make us pure enough to walk with him and his Father by obeying the renewed covenant, which in reality is the first covenant renewed. To obey the Torah is to identify with Messiah. Noah and his father before him walked with Elohim, and he and his family were saved from the flood. If you obey the Creator, you and your offspring are blessed. If you do not, you are cursed, and your destination is the lake of fire. The loving God message of Christianity is hogwash, designed to create unquestioning, docile followers of the rulers of church and state. An accurate translation of the Bible reveals an overarching message evident from Genesis to Revelation. That is, the covenant or the Torah of the Creator with individuals, with the nation of Israel, and with those Gentiles who join themselves to Israel must be obeyed. This Torah can be likened to a marriage contract, with the added feature of being sworn in blood. If the Creator breaks the blood covenant, he dies. If Israel breaks the blood covenant, either as a nation or as individual, they incur the death penalty. That also includes anyone who believes and follows the Messiah Yeshua, who renewed the covenant with us. That is why throughout the Bible, when Israel breaks the covenant, the people of Israel are described as an adulterer who broke the marriage covenant and is exiled out of the sacred land of Israel. Now we can understand in the book of Revelation why the Messiah is referred to as the bridegroom, and why in the near future, when the 7th trumpet sounds, the 144,000 brides of Messiah, wearing clean white linen because they obey the covenant or Torah, will take part in the marriage supper of the Lamb. The Hebrew word repent means turn back. In context, turn back to the Torah. Christians believe by confessing their sins and believing in Messiah they are saved. That is only half true. Believing is an action word in Hebrew and means more than occasionally warming a pew and singing Just As I Am. Messiah was the most important prophet. In his last words to us, he commanded us to obey the Torah and to walk with him. The marriage contract does not change when one spouse dies. The remaining living spouse may remarry under the covenant of the same marriage contract. The covenant is an agreement between theory and practice. Jehovah gave laws, and the people agreed to follow them. The covenant of the Torah is an expression of Jehovah's identity. When you walk with Yeshua and do as he did, then the facts match Jehovah's identity, and your heavenly soul and your earthly body agree. You are in alignment with Jehovah and Yeshua the Messiah. Peterson and other Christian Bible teachers are the false prophets described in the Bible. Through television every Sunday and internet social media 24/7, they send their biblically ignorant messages to millions and millions of gullible followers who have been duped by the pagan priests from the time of the Roman Flavian rulers of the 1st century. The present-day pagan sun god priests can be found in churches across the globe, many of them wearing sunburst graphics on their robes, accompanied by fish god hats. The Creator set a number of archaeological traps for those who believe the Bible is a mythical Hebrew folktale and there is no truth to it from a historic perspective. I can confidently predict within a decade the Bible will be acknowledged as the most accurate record of ancient history from the beginning of human habitation of Earth up to the year 100 BC. Since the 1980s, archaeologists have discovered a number of ancient cities of nations mentioned in the Bible in exactly the locations the Bible described. These cities are Arad, Bethel, Capernaum, Chorazin, Dan, Ephesus, Gaza, Hazor, Hesbon, Jericho, Joppa, Nineveh, Shechem, and Susa. Other recent archaeological discoveries are the fossilized remains of Noah's Ark and the settlement Noah created after the flood in the Araratu Mountains. Today it is the site of a national park operated by the Turkish government. Mount Ararat is a volcanic mountain that came into being well after the flood. Gentile Bible translators made a mistake. Noah's Ark did not dock on Mount Ararat. Surrounding the Dead Sea, the melted remains of Sodom, Gomorrah, and 3 other cities, complete with millions of 95% pure sulfur stones littering the sites. These brimstone sulfur stones burn at 1900 degrees Fahrenheit. Most sulfur deposits found on Earth contain only 45% sulfur. The discovery of the record of the Hebrew captivity, written in plain sight, in stone, revealing Ramesses II was not the pharaoh of Egypt during the Hebrew captivity. Egyptologist David Roll and other researchers present compelling evidence moving the date of Ramesses II forward by approximately 350 years, exposing the mistakes of the first Egyptologist, Jean-François Champollion, and mistakes in that great but factually flawed movie by Cecil B. DeMille, The 10 Commandments. Roll's research confirms the Bible as an accurate record of ancient history during the time of the Hebrew enslavement. The Red Sea crossing at the Gulf of Aqaba, with the coral-encrusted remains of Pharaoh's armies and chariots at the bottom. This site was confirmed by researchers from the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences. King Solomon erected a commemorative pillar with an inscription at both the entrance point and the exit point of the crossing. These are at exactly the geographical locations recorded in the Bible. The twin-peaked Mount Sinai in Saudi Arabia, with one peak blackened from scorching heat, and on the plain below the altar of the golden calf. To this day the locals call this Moses' Mountain. The rock at Rephidim that Moses split with his staff, with evidence rivers poured out both sides, that provided water for approximately 1.5 million Hebrew people that came out of Egypt with their livestock. The government of Saudi Arabia has fenced off this important historic site and plans to build highways to the site and a huge city to accommodate tourists. Saudi travel companies are now allowed to sell tours to the Mount Sinai area. The turquoise mine in the Sinai desert, where Joseph, the second in command in Egypt with his coat of many colors, inscribed the first known Hebrew alphabet that was likely revealed to him by the Almighty. Between 1859 and 1852 BC, Joseph, Ephraim, and Manasseh constructed the Hebrew alphabet shortly after they moved to Avaris. Prior to that, written communication took the form of pictographs and cuneiform, which is similar to pictograph. Creating words with Hebrew alphabet is the first example of coding similar to the coding used in the construction of DNA, and proof the creator can write code. There is considerable evidence the alphabet spread to other nations from this area of the world. Once established, Israel was at the crossroads of world trade. Moses was a prophet and a scribe who heard directly from Jehovah, the Creator. Moses spent time in Sinai prior to Exodus. In order to write the more than 600 commandments, he would have to have had knowledge of the Hebrew alphabet. It is highly likely that Moses and Aaron were the scribes who wrote the first 5 chapters of the Bible from instructions given from direct revelation from Jehovah, the Creator. The burial place of Joseph in Egypt, complete with a statue of him wearing his coat of many colors. The sarcophagus was empty, but the valuable articles buried with Joseph remained in the chamber, attesting to the fact that only the body was removed during the exodus for burial in Israel, as Joseph requested. It is likely instructions concerning the Hebrew alphabet was buried with Joseph to provide Moses with writing skills to record the first 5 books of the Bible that include the Torah. The Ark of the Covenant, created in the time of Moses, was never stolen or lost, but instead was hidden away in a chamber in the cave of Zedekiah. Shlomo Goren, the chief rabbi of Israel, visited the chamber and confirmed the ark was there. Ron Wyatt, his family and associates made many of these discoveries. Jim and Penny Caldwell also contributed in Saudi Arabia. There is a considerable amount of pushback from traditionalists who won't let go of the old incorrect view of ancient history, but the evidence of Bible accuracy is overwhelming, as is the archaeological record in the earth. With all this archaeological proof of the accounts of events and people in the book of Genesis, this important question comes to mind. Is the Bible account of creation of all things by a superintelligent being accurate? The theory of intelligent design is there are certain features of life and the universe better explained by the purpose of intelligence rather than an undirected material process, such as in the realm of biology, natural selection acting on random mutations. The sudden appearance of abundant new life forms, including vertebrates, during the Cambrian era, caused scientists to re-examine Darwin's theory of evolution. What is the substance of all things? Scientists tell us the material world is made up of vibrating particles and waves, and between these material forces is 99.99999% nothing or empty space. In actuality, all things are a giant hologram. Can a hologram of such enormous mathematical complication form itself, or does it require a creator with superintelligence? Scientists base the age of the Earth and everything on it by the current estimated size of the universe and its rate of expansion. So how exactly do scientists calculate the age of a hologram, which is all creation? The first 3 words in the Bible describing creation of all things are "in the beginning." From 1870s to 1920s, scientists had a firm belief that the universe had always existed without any changes. In the 1920s, American astronomer Edwin Hubble discovered observable proof that other galaxies existed in the universe besides our Milky Way galaxy. In 1929, he discovered all matter in the universe was moving away from all other matter. This proved the universe was expanding. In 1980, astronomer Alan Guth proposed a supplemental idea to the Big Bang Theory. Called the inflationary theory, it suggested that at first the universe expanded at a much faster rate than it does now. This concept of accelerated expansion allows for the formation of stars and planets. Science now theorizes there was a beginning. This agrees with the Bible account. We should remember scientific theory is revised as more information comes in. That is the nature of science. Man does not have all the answers. For example, the estimated age of creation has changed since the beginning of science. Recently, the age of the universe is being revised yet again from 13.7 billion years to 6 billion years. Science theories are in constant revision. You would not know that by the insistence by many scientists that what they believe is absolute truth and anything else has no credibility. Many neo-Darwinists claim those who do not believe in evolution are brain-impaired subhumans. At present, there is a divide in the scientific community between physicists, biologists, and even computer researchers, between those who do believe and those who dispute Darwin's contention that all living beings originated from an undirected material process assisted by a process of natural selection. A growing number of scientists, including Stephen Meyer and David Berlinski, claim that before anything material can come into being, conscious intelligence must be present. It is obvious because of the mathematical complication of all creation, it would require intelligent design to create the coding to put all these megatrillions of parts in place and in perfect balance. In no way could this happen by random chance. The odds are just too great. The DNA string has approximately 3 billion base pairs of DNA arranged into 46 chromosomes. Even for an ape to evolve into a human, the vast number of changes required in the DNA present astronomical mathematical odds when even one small change in sequence would result in failure and death. The Bible points out that each being was created in its own kind. Again, this revision in science supports the biblical account. Peterson skips over the biblical account of the creation of life as if Darwin's theory is fact when it is not. Biologists discovered that creatures lose DNA in order to adapt. In other words, there is no DNA evidence that species evolve, and plenty of DNA evidence that species devolve. I can predict with certainty within the next decade, every scientist in the world, without exception, will support the biblical account of creation. Pearson marvels at the continuity of Bible stories over thousands of years without recognizing that the Bible author is Jehovah, and it is His word that is spoken by Him or His Son that is written down by the prophets and scribes through direct contact or contact indirectly through His messengers, referred to in the King James Version as angels. Throughout the Bible, we are informed the words that come out of the prophet's mouth are the words of the Creator. Moses was a scribe who was directed by Jehovah to write the words that came from his mouth, just as Yeshua directed John to write down his words in the book of Revelation. Our videos give clarity to what is happening today and outline future events. That means what we published previously still has relevance and will give context to more recent videos. To understand events manifesting in our world, watch all our videos, subscribe to our channel, or at least give us a like. May the Ruach of truth be with you, and may the Torah of Yehovah be in your heart.